Hey guys, welcome back to Parkitect. In today's episode, we're going to be venturing into Sakura Gardens. So the description reads, attract more visitors to this peaceful garden by adding amusement rides and shops, while retaining its old charm. Be careful of building thrill rides, however, as the guests visiting the garden prefer gentle, calmer rides. I think that might be a little bit liberal on that. I think you can add thrill rides. I'm most likely going to add some thrill rides because I have some ideas in the wing. I did say in the last episode I was going to do some Godzilla theme, but that kind of fell through the floor because it's kind of just there's not enough to build off of. So instead, I'm going to do maybe a Pokemon themed area. So let's go see what the park looks like right now. I can maybe get a baseline of what I'm trying to do. But since it's a garden, I thought it would be appropriate to do a Pokemon themed area. I always wondered what a theme park would look like with Pokemon in mind. So Pikachu, Charmander, Bulbasaur, all those OG Pokemon. I would love to see a park based around it. Quickly, I forgot to even mention the goals. We have a cleanliness rating of 80%. Seems simple. Have at least 500 guests in the park. That's simple too. Have a cleanliness rating of 70%. So those two kind of go together. So that means I get what do I unlock? Log Flume. Ooh, I get a log flume. That could be themed to Bulbasaur, right? Or Squirtle. Either or. That doesn't work. That works for me. Okay, so there's a garden area here. I think you can't delete this. You can't. Whoops. You can delete the path. Oopsie. Uh-oh. I didn't mean to do that. Okay, let's just fix that. So you can't delete this, but that's fine. We can keep this area pretty basic. What's the front of the park? Over here. So typical Japanese looking structure. That's why I was thinking Pokemon would work because it's Tokyo Japanese type of thing. So I felt like that would be fitting. The only thing I would do right off the bat would be get rid of these paths here so that I don't have guests get too lost. So we're gonna do that to kind of help ourselves with that. Let's go see what the rides. Carousel, Ferris wheel, wave, swinger, good. No thrill rides. Yeah. Junior coaster, mini power, yikes. Yeah, Calm River ride. Oh wow, there's really not good stuff here. And then no food except for vending machines. Okay, I think I'm gonna research shops actually first because that's something I might need. Because I do want to build a main street of some sort that resembles like a Pokemon area. I'm pulling mostly from most of the Game Boy games, I think. Honest, I have never played a Pokemon game in my life, but I've been doing some research to figure out the aesthetic of a Pokemon themed area. But it can happen. And let's see, scenery. We have no scenery. Oh, yikes and half. We have nothing. We have generic, which I can use, but then we have spooky. But what's spooky? Oh, props. Oh, I got Burial Man right off the bat. Hell yeah. Okay, so I can use something like that. I can do something with that. Vehicles. Yeah, we can have vehicles in the area. I'm thinking a place called Pokemon Plaza or something, like a fountain or something that's shaped as a Pokeball. I don't know, something like that. That's what my idea is. So I got some interesting ideas floating in my head. So yeah, let's hopefully this park doesn't kick my butt, because I know Sylv had a hard time working on this scenario, and I feel like I'm gonna have a hard time too. But if I build a junior coaster right off the bat, that is a dueling. I want to make a dueling junior coaster themed to Charmander and Squirtle, because it's fire and water, I don't know, type of thing. I think I want to do that, and then see where that takes me. Man, let's hope this works, okay? Let's get on to building. Okay, let's get started with the construction of this Pokemon-themed theme park. So the first thing I wanted to work on was a dueling junior coaster, because I haven't done a dueling coaster in a hot minute, and I felt like a junior coaster would be appropriate to do so in this park. So I decided to color it of the color of Charmander and the color of Squirtle, because it's fire versus water. Seems appropriate. and I just went and started the construction of said layout. Building dueling coasters in Parkitect are complicated and easy at the same time. It's kind of hard to keep the trains kind of in sync with each other. The only other dueling coaster I've worked on is my dogfight coaster that I made for American Adventure. I did that a while ago. It's been like 3 years now. I should really get back to work on that project. We will see. But it was kind of the same system that I worked. The same method I did was build them in tangent, so you balance back and forth from each builder. It's kind of complicated. You kind of have to keep yourselves in tabs, so you kind of just do that. This layout you see in front of you changes later, like extremely later, like way in the future, but I just needed to build a layout now to get guests in, and I should have made the coaster longer from the beginning, but I also was running out of money at the same time, because again, I was building 2 coasters at once in the same spot, so it was more expensive this way, and so that's what happened. So when I started this whole Pokemon theme, or when I changed themes from Godzilla to Pokemon, I didn't realize what I was getting into, because I have never played a Pokemon game in my life. I think I played Pokemon Stadium, which was on the, I think it was on the NES. I'm not really sure. I didn't do my research on that. But it was just a Pokemon Stadium like fighting game. So that you pick a Pokemon, or you pick Pokemons, and then you fight the other trainer, and you do all that stuff. It's the only other game I played. So I had to go do some research, like a lot of research. So I focused on doing a lot of 1st gen, 2nd gen, and 3rd gen Pokemon stuff. So the coaster station for the Dueling Junior coaster is going to be more of like a Pokemon Center. And this particular one I think I pulled exactly from the anime, because I found some really good shots of like some of the buildings. The hard part about Pokemon in general is that all their buildings are sprite based, and so it's really hard to translate from a 2D image to a 3D image what I want of a building, because everything in Parkitect is 3D. So that was the challenge. I kind of like was pulling my hair out during some of this progress of like trying to translate a sprite into a 3D object and still having its identity as that building without, well, I didn't want to lose its detailing because of what Parkitect would do if you didn't like watch what we were doing. So I had to make sure that was happening. But with the anime helped fill in those gaps, because the anime did make some creative choices to some of the original game's locations and areas. So that actually helped out a lot in some areas. And also some of it was guessing. I did a lot of guesswork in some of the buildings, and I also added some creative flair to fill in those gaps. So that was some of a challenge. I was like crying halfway through trying to figure out how to do this. It's probably why this video has taken this long, because it was just a different monster in itself on, well, the theme. It was kind of just, I don't know. It was completely out of my comfort zone and outside the box. So that's kind of how it went. As I rambled, this building here is now turned into somewhat of a structure that looks like something from the anime. This is the Pokemon Center, as I said before. I did like a specialized brickwork. It was kind of like making sure that I wanted to see those lines be defined so you can tell it's like stacked stone. And then I made a very simple Pokeball on top. I didn't actually make the sign that says Poke Center because I didn't feel like I needed to. Just something tells me that I just didn't want to clutter up the building's aesthetic, so this is just the simple way to do it. This is, by the way, a very large Poke Center, because most of the game sprites that I've seen, like in the Game Boy version or the NS version, they're all very small buildings because you can't run behind them because of how the game's designed in that flat-looking way. Over here, I decided to build a plaza with a Pokeball. The Pokeball actually rotates a little bit because I made it go diagonal because I thought it would not be cool to have a diagonal, but it just kind of looked ugly at the end of it, so I scrapped that. It changes. And off to the second building of this main street. Now, this area is not a dedicated area in Pokemon lore or anything. It's just like our starter town. I think I called it Pokemon Street. Yeah, I called it Pokemon Street just because it was a very simple, generic street with simple buildings. And so I felt like, so I have the Poke Center, now I have to build the Pokemart, and this is where our first restaurant arrives. And it's just going to house this burger stand and a simple depot to supply said burger stand. So the Pokemart is very simple. Honestly, it's just it reminds me of a 7-Eleven for some reason because it has the blue coloring and then it has like an orange stripe to it. So it was just very convenience store looking type of structure. And honestly, I think that's what they were going for. I think in the sprite design was to make it like a store because it is. It's just a store. It's a very generic store. So I decided to add some flair to this store particularly because there's some different. For my quick research, I saw like 4 to 5 different designed Pokemarts. And I decided to combine 2 of them a little bit in this design here just to give it some different flair of my take. So I added this orange border and then the blue, and then I had this like this arched dome roof with the Pokeball symbol, which is going to be white and blue because that's the symbol for it. I think it's basically just like Pokeball that's in negative colors. And then I just made a gray roof to match it, and then blue accent to add that little wall. You know, just a different version of a Pokemart. And I didn't want to put Pokemart, I just wanted to say Mart for some reason. I don't know why I decided to do that. I think I felt like it would be too long, across the building. Because with Pokemart, it would be just too long. So I decided to cut it to Mart because it's the same size as the rounded roof. I think that's probably the reason why. I might be completely wrong, but I don't quite remember. So a lot happened. So there was a big jump. There was a lot of going on. There was also a point where I ran out of money. I had to go play the game for a second to see how I was going to rebuild some of my park structure. And at that point, I was kind of like creatively blocked. I didn't know what to do. So I went back to the drawing board of like researching Pokemon stuff, and I found some more sprites that actually helped with like basic buildings. And so these buildings you're going to see here get constructed are more like very generic. I'm assuming they're like Japanese houses. So I'm going to build some customized roofs and make them look more like a simple formatted, well, how do I describe this? They're very plain buildings, but they look like they would be pulled from the sprite of the game. They look really close to that feeling, so I kind of focus on that. Also wanted to add 2 more additional restaurants because that one burger stand was kind of being, what's the word? Used up the whole time. So everybody was kept buying burgers and we ran out. So I needed to build some more structures and more buildings to supply more drinks or other things like that. So I'm not sure which buildings these are from, what part of a Pokemon game or what city. I think they're like from a starter city, I'm assuming, because they're very generic looking housing. So I decided to do all the reds and the purple roofs, and then it's like a tannish wooden material for the main bulk of that building. What I did like about this entire build was doing the little shiny effect on glass when you have it in a pixeled game, and so doing that on the windows was like the fun part for me for some weird reason. But it was just that for me, when I did those little streaks in the windows, it really sold it to me that this is now a game, or a pixeled version of a Pokemon game now brought to 3 dimensions. And it also helped that Parkitect being in such a textureless environment, like most of its pieces are textureless, shapes included, really sold that feel like, oh, we're just now in the video game of Pokemon. So we're just going to be walking around a town looking for Pokemon, finding a trainer, you know, doing your battling stuff, and that's kind of what it really sold that for me. And that took me a while to get to that moment. So I kept grinding at it, and I kept figuring out messing with things here and there, testing things out. But once I got the groove, it finally kept going. But this is not the only roadblock I had. I had a couple more roadblocks during this entire progress because of other places I wanted to imitate for the park's aesthetic and look of Pokemon. So I used the text signs for the slashes in the windows of the glares. They're just regular slash key. Yes, the slash key. Just typical. I used 2 of those, put them right there, and then now they look like they're shiny, even though it doesn't. They're not really shiny, are they? So on to the biggest addition to the parks. Yeah, this is one of the bigger additions, and this is where things get more complicated. So as I did more research, I found some really cool locations. So this location is going to be Orberg. Orberg is like apparently a town that's situated up in the mountains of Pokemon, or I don't know the island's name, but it's a mining town, and I saw that there's this power plant, and there's like these conveyor belts that are blue and with red spores that go into the mountain, and I'm like, that's really cool looking. I like that idea. And so I decided to put it way back here next to the gardens of Sakura Gardens, and then kind of go from there. So I had to go figure out first a couple of the residential buildings. So there's a blue hut like this with a angled roof. There is a tall skyscraper / apartment building that I need to build, and then I go from there. And then I had in my mind the main factory was going to be the coaster station for the coaster that will be in this section of the park. So this is where things start going, and I actually like this land I think I like this land the most. There's actually a second one that I made that I like really well too. But I had to go figure out where things were going to sit. I had a hard time figuring out my layout for certain lands and how to snake my path through the park to make it look a little bit more organic. I've done this millions of times at this point, but for some reason sometimes I have a hard time planning out a pathway here and there, which is odd for me, but I stuck true and made sure those paths were pretty interesting. Kind of went from there. So this is here, I'm just doing your typical, doing the shine on the windows to give it that pixeled Pokemon look, and then finish the building right up, and then blueprint this, and then put this sucker down a whole bunch of times because it needs to be put down to kind of suggest that this is the town. This is the town where you'll lead into, and then here comes the coaster. So I thought it was more appropriate to make it a steel launch coaster and do some just regular steel coaster stuff. The elements I used, I made a very typical top hat, like not Incredicoaster. Why am I thinking Velocicoaster? I get those two mixed up for some reason. They have the stupidest names. Regardless, I did that type of top hat, and then I did more of a sweeping helix motion in its layout. It does a couple more inversions, and I wanted this to kind of sprawl over the landscape of this mountain, so Orberg. And the environment is very rocky, so a lot of sandstone it looked like, and like maybe a harder stone. I'm not sure what the anime really portrayed. No one really talks about it with one of the research I've looked at. But from my lame perspective, I think Orberg is a coal mining facility, because on the conveyor belt it looks like coal, and you would power the power plant to supply the power to the town. That was my interpretation for what I've seen on the anime and the sprites of Orberg. So that's what I went for. So after we finished the coaster's layout, we test it, open it. I think we charged, what did I charge? I charged 15 for it. So this is where bulk of my money was going to be made. And then I wanted to build a giant show building to house the coaster's suggested transfer track. I don't get to build one in here because it's all inside a building. And maybe a pre-show, I would imagine. but also is just kind of a way to kind of frame my area, because I wanted to make sure that the main factory was my centerpiece and my entrance to the coaster, and then more rocks and mountainish area around the area to kind of enclose it and then frame the story of where we are. We're in Orberg. We're here to either go find a trainer and go battle some Pokemon. I did call the coaster Onyx Rush, so I do get to build a couple Onyx Pokemon kind of laid around in the area, because it is a rock Pokemon. It kind of makes sense it would be in a rocky environment. I do like the distinction between this area and Pokemon Street, because there's a river that kind of separates the two, and that gives your transition, which I really like, because the water in the river is actually coming from Orberg, coming down the stream into the main lake of Sakura Gardens. It kind of works out really well. So this is the part where I get to build some of the stations, well, the station's entrance, or the coaster station. And this is where I think I win the scenario, because this scenario is actually very easy to win after you build at least 3 coasters, or just maybe 2, with lots of scenery and a lot of flat rides. So I've noticed that the guests here do like calmer rides. So you have more calm rides, they attend more, and they stay in there. But having a thrill ride in there won't hurt you either. I did pull the method of having a whole bunch of rides in the corner, and that actually helped out a lot, because I was not having no money generated. So I decided to build I think I built a wild mouse in the corner, half buried in the ground to give it excitement, and then built 4 or 5 flat rides in the corner, made some money, and then once I got enough money to build scenery, I just deleted it and then worked on this factory for Orberg. So the Orberg's factory's building is, to me, it looks like a power plant. You have this yellowish bottom with a gray top with a gigantic rectangular opening where the conveyor belts come out of. The conveyor belts go into the mine and bring back coal. Honestly, I think this is the most inefficient way to deliver coal ever, is a conveyor belt system versus, I don't know, a truck or a train. But this is Pokemon. I don't know why they did this, but they did it. So it's just kind of weird that I've noticed that. So I was going to build some conveyor belts out of shapes. Shapes really lended themselves a lot in this scenario. They are just wonderful as usual. I cannot sing enough their praises. These pieces are the best. So I would suggest you all get used to working with them. They can really get details in that you need for certain things, and this just worked out really well. Here I was trying out a bracket thing with the actual, I don't know what those are called. What are those on the keyboard? Well, I'm going to call them brackets, because they look like brackets. They didn't work out, because they didn't size down far enough, and they couldn't close in space. If I had Construction Anarchy enabled, I probably would have been able to do it, but it is what it is. There's certain details that I wanted in the conveyor belt to reveal, and it was just such a small detail that I removed it entirely. So there are those strategical design decisions that I have to make, is if I'm trying to make something or replicate a certain thing, and there's a detail that I want, and that detail that cannot be replicated, that's something that you have to remove. Some details are more important than others. Honestly, the detail that I would love to see on all the structure is bolts. I would love to see bolts on the conveyor belt, but they're so small. There's no point. You can't see them from this distance. Not even if you zoomed in with the zoom in mod. There's no way. So that's a detail I will ignore and move on from there. But I wanted to get the look of the conveyor belts pretty accurate to the anime that I saw and the couple of the game sprites that I saw. So it's the bluish conveyor belt with the red, yellow looking supports. I think this really sold it. And then I like that this is the centerpiece of the land, because as you kind of weave into the town, it kind of emerges from the buildings that I'm building right now. These are the apartment buildings. And I thought to myself, also, to build these apartment buildings, I could house an additional restaurant kind of hidden in the back with a show building, or another extension to the building. But these 2 buildings look like they're 2, but they're actually just 1. So I was kind of thinking like a theme park. I would cover up such a building with fake buildings to kind of suggest that there's more than one. But it's all just one structure combined together to house, I think, I can't remember the restaurants I put in here, but I'm assuming it's a drink and some food stand of some sort, because we're far away at this point from the main street. So I don't want my guests walking all the way back to the main street to get some food. They can get food here. I'm always thinking about that logistic distance for my guests of where do they get food, because there's a certain distance they will go before they will have to go back out, and then they won't return to the area. I want them to be in each area as long as possible. That's my philosophy on what I'm trying to do. And again, I think that's how a real theme park works, is you want your guests in your park as long as possible. So that's what I try to do here. So on to designing some more windows for said apartment building. Yeah, I'm probably going to call these apartment buildings. This was a fun little build because I like to build all these custom windows. I didn't realize that this would happen. This entire build I made a lot of custom windows in this map entirely. Like, this just was wild. And just doing the reflection on the glass really just sells it for me. It screams like it's a pixeled game, old graphics, and it kind of is very charming. Honestly, this could work for a Mario area too, because Mario has that same aesthetic, very plain colors, no textures. I bet a Sonic map would work well too. Maybe a Zelda. I've been thinking about doing Zelda, but I'm kind of scared to do Zelda because there's so many unique shapes you can do in Zelda, but the game's very limited on that. I would have to either do it with Rotation Anarchy and Construction Anarchy enabled, but I kind of been liking playing the game very vanilla anyway, because it's been more of a challenge. I've been enjoying it since at this point, which is why I haven't really been working on American Adventure, because I probably can get back into American Adventure. I just need to think of an idea, build it. Yeah, we'll see. So here is what am I doing? I'm building some vents on top of this building. Again, it's just like a simple vent or something. I'm not really sure what it could be. I think it's just a vent. Yeah, honestly, it's just a vent for said building. Okay, so yeah, I'm just making a vent. This was harder than I thought because it was at a 45-degree angle, and I needed that detail of showing itself, or showing the little metal flaps. So this was a kind of a challenging moment, but it worked out great because it looks wonderful. So as I make this said vent, blueprint it, copy it over, and then kind of wrap up that building, and I think it's finished. Yeah, the building's finished. So on to building some more places for the guests to kind of look at the coaster, maybe a viewpoint, kind of things like that. And on to as well to finish the conveyor belts into the mine of Orberg. So that's what was the objective here. And a lot of blueprinting was used in this process, because there's no way I was going to do this all by hand. I needed to blueprint it and then send it forth, and then I was kind of done with it. So here is what so far Orberg looks like. Looks pretty good so far. There's some things I skip out of this recording because there was just a lot of support building and a lot of conveyor belt making. But I did make the entrance of the mine, which is kind of just sits here below the top hat. So this, I think, worked out really well. Kind of framed the area pretty cohesively. I took liberties of the town being in front of the factory instead of the factory being in the back of the town, because creative liberties, and the way this back area was kind of positioned, I kind of wanted to keep it organized. And the coaster honestly should be in the back of your land because that draws the guests in. Most lands are designed like this. I've seen like Disney do this, Universal do this, Legoland's done this. Any theme park in their right mind would do this. So quickly before I do forget, here comes our first Pokemon, Onix. And it was just kind of perfect that he's made of rocks from Parkitect, and this actually looked really well, and it matches his or it's it. I don't know if it's a he or she. It's probably there's a male and female Onyx. I always like these Pokemon from the beginning. This is an OG. They're basically just rock serpents, and I thought it was very appropriate to have them in the Orberg area because they are stone rock monsters, rock type. They kind of fit this area. So just a lot of messing with sizes and pieces for the Onyx, and then figuring out his I'm gonna call it antler. It's like an antler or a spike on their head, and then their mouth is made of shapes. I think, yeah, nothing really too enlightening to tell you. You can kind of tell it looks like an Onyx from a distance, and I think I blueprinted it and then made a couple more in the area, kind of like a discovery type of thing. So let's see how the park is operating at the moment and see where we stand with the park's operations. Okay, here we are in Sakura Gardens. It's going to show you how the park's running at the moment and everything that is planned for the next phase of the park, because there's some ideas I want to complete, because I have some more things to showcase of like a Pokemon themed thing. But here is the last area we worked on, is the Orberg. I'm gonna call it a coal factory. It's honestly a coal factory, and then town with the steel coaster. This area was actually quite fun. I liked the look so far. And then our front area, which I think needs a little bit more detail and work, because I still want to add some more Pokemon stuff. So I think I want to add a sign on top actually right here that says Charmander versus Squirtle. I think that's what I want to do on this. I'm still debating on putting a Pokeball symbol here maybe. I'm not necessarily sure yet. I will think about it. But this area is pretty solid. The only thing I need to fix is this back area, because I did pull a sill on building. Actually there was two coasters back here that I actually just deleted. It was like a wild mouse and a spinning. So that was to help me make money. So these are actually going to go bye-bye. These two should not be here. These are quite ugly. So I'm going to get rid of them and then venture maybe this way. Maybe make the path kind of go around the lake a little bit. I don't think I'm going to add some rides here, but I want to put back here. Oh, this is an example building. This building will have to actually move again. I want to build a city, and I think I'm going to pick Goldenrod City. I don't know what game that's from, but I know it's Pokemon. And I kind of like the idea of having skyscrapers and maybe a subway, and then have a gym that will be the entrance to a dark ride for Pokemon Snap. That's what I want to do, and I'm not sure what I'm going to... Well, maybe this is enough room out here, actually, right here to put the show building. I could buy land back here, which is a nice idea. Or maybe put the building back here. I could get rid of all these trees because they don't need to be here. The only area that I can't touch is the garden area. This kind of is basically... I'm gonna not touch it. Never. Maybe... You know what? I'm gonna sprinkle in some Pokemon maybe in. So maybe a Pikachu, a Bulbasaur. I think in the lake I can add a Gyarados. That'd be cool, actually. Let's try that. Let's put a Gyarados here. I do have to build more Pokemon. I only built one Pokemon in the first time lapse. That was the Onix. I need to build more. So that's the idea. Also in the Orberg, I need to build a vehicle. One of the mining vehicles sitting somewhere. I think I'm going to build it. Oh wow, there's directional space. Oh, actually no, I can put it right here, just a prop. Yeah, we'll build one, put one in. That'd be good. And this area is basically done. I'm not gonna necessarily change it. I do like where it sits. The only gripe I have is I wish I could put supports on these mountains to kind of suggest that they're not real, but I'm up against the edge of the map, so it's fine. I'm going to maybe fix some things back here, add some more details, things like that. I'll probably do that off camera. But let's quickly, let's just get into the next section of the park. It's going to be Goldenrod City back here, maybe a small little village, maybe Twin Leaf Town, maybe here, maybe with one flat ride, kind of a filler between the two designated lands. So yeah, I'm probably going to do that. Let's get on to building. Okay, let's get on to more construction of this Pokemon park. So I stated in the overview of the park at this moment I wanted to finish some details for said Orberg because it needed some more details to kind of finish up the storytelling of this area to kind of match the game and the area it's representing. So I decided to build one of the mining vehicles. I saw some good pictures from the anime. I saw some good sprites that I found, and I just wanted to replicate said vehicle. I think it's like a hybrid excavator type mining vehicle. I'm not really sure. It's not matching anything that I've seen in real life, so it's 100% made up, I think. It's kind of unique. It's very unique for Pokemon, because Pokemon kind of feels like a futuristic, out of this world area, even though I couldn't find any evidence of this, but I think Pokemon's based on like an alternate reality of Earth, but I'm not really sure. Because from my like headcanon, when I see pictures from like the anime and said from games, I don't see like normal animals. I don't see pigs, I don't see horses or dogs or cats. I see a lot of Pokemon. So it seems like this is the world's animal creatures. I really don't know much about Pokemon, but this is just my lame idea. So I don't know. It's just Pokemon's kind of that weird thing, and it's so funny because Pokemon came out when I was like, I want to say 7, so it's relatively not that old. It's younger than me, but it's not like super old, but it's been around for a while. Let's jump ahead to, as I said way before earlier in this video about this dueling coaster's layout. I decided to change it because it needed to get a excitement boost because it wasn't long enough. The lines were horrible and no one was riding the coaster, so I decided to add some more helixes and areas of interest to give the coaster a little bit more oomph, and it doubled, I think, the ride's length, which is a good thing because the longer the ride, with more excitement, the better excitement it can generate. Usually, I'm kind of bad with my statistics on this coaster because I really don't pay attention to that because right now I'm just trying to do aesthetics and making the layout look nice and give me a boost in excitement a little bit. I know some of the tricks, but this is just me fiddling around with the layout and trying to figure out how I'm going to return back to the station without making it too complicated. And clearances were tough, especially with doing more helixes and things like that. But out of all this, I think this turned out really well. I like that I added the additional helixes and points of interest that I added later. I do actually add Charmander and Squirtle finally to the ride because that's their namesakes, and it just looks better. The red coaster wins the entire time, which makes no sense because water should actually win because it's water versus fire. But that was one thing I couldn't control. I could have maybe staggered the trains when on the chain lift, but I decided not to do that. I kind of like them going up at the same time and then just kind of fighting. So that's how it turned out. Adding some rocks and some grass things to the area kind of helped out. Here comes our second Pokemon of this entire build, is going to be Charmander. He's going to be posted on top of a rock, breathing fire down into this little pit that's all been scarred and burned already. Pokemon are kind of hard to make in Parkitect because of how small they are, so these are actually bigger than their actual counterparts. Again, it's also a coaster going past it. You need it big enough for the guests to see it, so I had some liberties of changing that a little bit. So here is Charmander. all made of cylinders, some half spheres, and some teeth, and then a fire piece for his tail. And then he has an activation from a controller that makes him breathe fire every time the train passes by, adding a little bit of animation and interest to the coaster. This was hard to put in, actually, was the fire breathing element. That was kind of very difficult to put in, but I figured it out at an angle. It was so hard. It's a little not straight, actually, if you look at it from a different angle, but I tried my best. And then here comes Squirtle. Squirtle's going to be a little bit more toward the front, near a body of water. Makes sense. And I decided to build him more on a diagonal to kind of give it that breakaway from the grid feel. Because I think what this game has against it is the grid feeling. When everything's on the grid, everything's in a square. That's why I try to make most of my parks very staggered and diagonal, because it breaks up that grid. It makes it a little bit more organic. Because in our real life, we're not restricted by the grid. We can do whatever we want with buildings. So we're going to jump ahead to the third area. So I had in my head a Pokemon Snap Dark Ride that I wanted to build from the get-go, because that's perfect for a ride, a dark ride especially. So I wanted to build Professor Oak's laboratory, because that is a very iconic building from the game. It's probably from the first game. I don't know where, but yeah, I don't remember which game it comes from. But I know exactly what town it was from, in Pallet Town. So this was the perfect opportunity to make Professor Oak's building, or lab, as the station's entrance building. So I kind of copied the aesthetics of the building from a sprite that I found, and a couple 3D renders that people have made, and I went from there. Originally, this building was going to be in the Pokemon Street as like a gift shop. I'm glad I didn't do that. I'm glad I stuck it here, because it does represent a pretty big character in the series, and it matches the Pokemon Snap feel. Because from the game that I've noticed, there's a couple games that came out apparently in Pokemon Snap. Everybody starts with Professor Oak, and your objective is to go and take pictures of Pokemon. It's a very basic game, but I think it's more of a relaxing game. I'm not really sure. So this ride required me to use the Haunted Mansion Dark Ride, which was fitting, because I can rotate the train cars to face certain scenes. That's what I wanted. And I had it in mind to have at least 2 cutaways to showcase 2 distinct areas. So that was the objective here. And I like that this show building is way in the back, where guests can't see it. It's all covered by trees. And you have this sense of disbelief when you walk into Professor Oak's lab. It becomes bigger inside, you don't know where you're going. Kind of was the objective here. So from my quick research, I found out that the vehicles in Pokemon Snap had this like yellow look to them, like yellow construction vehicles. So I did that too here to match that, and then build from there. The funny thing is, this ride is the most popular ride in the park. It has a line always, and it's always at full capacity. So I think my theory is right about calm rides, especially for this scenario, do wonders, and especially this being a dark ride with a decoration and amazing. Yeah, this ride has made me money tenfold, and whatever decoration I have put into it, I've made money back on it, so I'm quite happy with the results of this, because every time I try to build dark ride in this campaign series so far, they're not always the best. They're not always full, they're not always popular. But this round, I felt like this was a success. I'm like, oh wow, this is really nice. It's they're doing really well. I like it. I also like building dark rides. They're fun. They're fun to do because you're trying to figure out how to tell a story, and it's building this like little dinky little model. It's kind of what I loved about it. So here comes something cool and new that I've never done in my previous scenarios. I always want to build a sign for said ride. Sometimes I don't build signs because I'm either too lazy or it's very time consuming, because building signage for a ride is very time consuming. So I just, instead of putting it on top of the building for Pokemon Snap the ride, I didn't want to mess up Professor Oak's building because it looked too nice. So I decided to make this like a picture op type of thing. And I was thinking to myself like, oh yeah, this would be like in a Japanese theme park because Japanese people like taking pictures in front of these structures. So I decided to kind of replicate that idea too. I don't know why, Japanese guests have this interesting attraction toward having picture ops. I think here in America we do it too, but not as much. So it felt appropriate to have this thing that says Pokemon Snap. It's just like gigantic, and it has to say the ride because that was the running joke for Universal from eons ago when they started making rides. It's always either called Simpsons the Ride or what was the other one? Transformers the Ride. It's still called Transformers the Ride, I think. So it's kind of just a gimmicky thing, so I did that too. There's a Pokeball, makes sense that it's Pokemon Snap the Ride, and then there's my sign. We jump ahead to making our fourth Pokemon. It's going to be a Bulbasaur. Originally it was going to be a Pikachu, and Pikachu was a disaster. He did not look like Pikachu, and it looked ugly, and so I opted into making it easier Pokemon, and Bulbasaur was that choice. So here's Bulbasaur, kind of alone in the field. I didn't know what else to add to the area, so I kind of just moved on to the next little scene, and this scene's going to be a picture of Dittos? Not Dittos. I forgot they're called. Dig somethings. They're like these mole creatures. I forgot the name of the Pokemon. You guys will probably remind me in the comments. It's like a mole digging Pokemon. It's brown, pink nose, black eyes. It's kind of weird Pokemon, but it worked out for this little cave area because it kind of told the story. You went from the fields to the caves. There you go. I want to say Ditto, but it's not a Ditto. Ditto is the pink one, isn't it? See, that's what you can tell. I'm not a Pokemon fan. I just don't know it. I did my research. I tried my best. So on to building some more structures for said Pallet Town. So Pallet Town, I just copied the residential buildings that are in the area because Pallet Town is a starter city in Pokemon. I think your character starts there whenever you start said game. I think this one's particularly from Red version. I think red or blue. So I just wanted to build some typical buildings. One houses a restroom, the other houses an additional restaurant. It's actually bigger than the inside. So I did the same trick I did in Orberg. I did it here as well. So it kind of was this theme of using a facade to portray an area, and the back area is just a typical building because theme parks are cheap in a lot of areas. But I find that the fun part of building realistic looking parks in Parkitect is I like building the facades type of thing and then building a very typical looking concrete building with AC units. I don't know, it just kind of sells the idea. And it gives me that hope, like maybe one day we'll have a Pokemon theme park in the world. Who knows? But this was one of the, I don't know, the fun things to do was that. So on to my fourth and final area. No, it's not my fourth and final area. It's like the last area. So as I did more research and kind of just bouncing around from other Pokemon ideas, I did have in mind I wanted like a Japanese city. So I had to do some research on some areas, and I landed on Jubilife City was one of them, and this was from actually Diamond version. And what caught my eye was that there was a TV station, a Pokitech office building, and a couple office apartment buildings. And I kind of liked the style of what they looked like, and especially because they were very pixel and square based. I was like, oh yeah, I can replicate in this part into Parkitect easily. So this is like one of the starter buildings. So I just wanted to build a very typical apartment building, kind of give that style. I don't know what theme park would go with this level of detail. Maybe Disney would, but we don't trust Disney at the moment. And Universal might do it. I mean, they have that relationship with Nintendo, so having a Pokemon land is not far-fetched, actually. So this is one of the buildings. I blueprinted and used it to kind of move it around. But I wanted to build a street to kind of match the aesthetic of Jubilife City and go from there. So there's Pokemon building number 1. In this area, I wanted to build a 4-star cinema because Calm Rides are doing really well in this park, so might as well use them to their fullest extent, and it was a kind of appropriate way to kind of hide that building in the TV station. I don't like the building that the 4-star cinema is, so I cover it up. It goes bye-bye. It disappears, it turns into a regular brick, turns into a regular square-looking building, and then there you go. It's a theater for... It's probably just 3D movie of Pokemon, maybe a Pokemon battle of some sort, maybe it shows an episode of Pokemon. I don't know. It does something. So I'm jumping around as usual. I am jumping from different projects here and there of this last it's not my last area. It's like there's one more area, but we'll get to it. One of the other buildings is like a brick building, kind of a different take on the other buildings in the area, but these are all the buildings from Jubilife that what I can understand from the sprites that I found, and I think Jubilife had a image in the anime. It did. I found some images of that too. So yeah, my folder for all the Pokemon images that I need to find is quite full. There's a lot in there, and so I was just cracking it in there. Like I needed stuff, and that's what I figured out. So this building, just kind of copying the sprite. Straightforward windows, all custom built out of cubes. Bright colors, not as what's the word? Not stained color, but more droopy color. I forgot the word. It's okay. Moving on to some windows, and this is where I do some of the reflection again. I like doing the reflection thing. It's kind of just soothing now at this point to add that in, because it kind of, at that point when I get that reflection in the window, it kind of completes the build, and it sells it that this was inside the game and now it's in real life. You can walk up to it, you can touch it, you can take pictures with it, all that cool stuff. So I get to blueprint it and then place it around in different places to kind of just make the city kind of grow from there. And I like that the city's way in the back of my park because it's now a centerpiece for the guests to see from the Pokemon Street. I imagine you can see it from Pokemon Street. You can see the main structures. You walk toward it. You're like, let's go to the town. I want to see what's in the city. And then you go from there. I do imagine that this park would have Pokemon Go enabled. So honestly, you probably whip out your phone, go find some Pokemon in certain key areas. It makes you like walk to a corner of the park. You go catch your Pokemon and you go from there. I honestly would believe that this would have Pokemon Go like infused in the park's atmosphere, honestly. I think that would be the coolest thing ever. So on to building the TV studio. This is a very straightforward building. I wanted to kind of imitate the structure that I saw on the sprites. It's very concrete, I would imagine. It has this giant screen on the front, so that was very alluring to me. And then it had these giant antennas on top of it. I'm like, that's really cool. So it would broadcast the TV, or broadcast the channels from that antenna to said residents of Pokemon or the residents of Jubilife City. Either or. It was a really cool building, and it was a really cool centerpiece to have as my entrance to the 4-star cinema, or the 4D cinema. So that was the main draw of why I wanted this building, and why I picked the city, honestly. And to kind of pull it in together, I put the logo for Pokemon in it with an image sign, and it fits perfectly. Kind of blends in with the white border, like trying to blend it in, but it works well and I like it. And then on to build the antennas. Oh, excuse me. Okay, the antennas are made of X's and some poles or pillars, kind of add that cross structure to it, and then go from there. Very straightforward. I've done this techniques numerous of times to add that piece. The text piece is very useful for adding those weird shapes that you don't normally get to have, and it adds more detail to said building. I could have just left it with pillars, but no, I wanted the extra detail. And then half hemispheres for the antennas. It worked out really well. So we're going to jump ahead to another building. This is going to be the Parkitect administration building, or like office buildings. I made a very quick little Pokeball plaza brick decoration on the floor to kind of just tie it in as a plaza. And this building was going to be housed as a restaurant. I felt like this was another good point to have a restaurant this far away from the already existing restaurant in Pallet Town. So you already can see the pattern here. Every land has its own dedicated restroom and restaurant and supporting rides and main attraction. So the main attraction for Jubilife City is the theater. Actually, it's not the theater. It's a coaster. You'll see that in a second. I overspoke. So, yeah, but you can still see the idea. What I'm trying to do is make these each land very distinct from each other, and they all can support themselves independently. No land needs a restaurant from the other. That's kind of, I think, the philosophy in theme park design is you want people to be in each area as long as possible before they actually decide to go into the next area. Also, maybe a way to make the park last longer, that they decide to actually stay at a hotel, then to come back to your park and be like, okay, cool, I get to experience this side of the park now because I was at this side of the park all day yesterday. Okay. Simple things like that. This is what I've learned over the years of this basically amateur park building, as I call it, because I am a very much an amateur. I have no sense of knowing anything what really happens in the theme park industry. I'm a very big enthusiast, so I kind of know some stuff, but I'm not like an official. But this is what I've understand of how parks actually run in the world, and so I kind of wanted to imitate that here in Parkitect. Even though the game really doesn't operate like that, the game operates in a completely different way, and doing realistic stuff for this game kind of beats the purpose, because honestly the areas that I have here are gigantic. It's just too much. It's just, yeah, it's how it goes. So here we are with what am I doing here? I'm building this skyscraper. So filling up the roof, doing some minor differences, just trying to finish this building. This building I think is the tallest building in the park. Don't remember, but I wanted to finish the top of the building. I don't know what else to say about this building. It was a very simple build. You have most of the structure is made of cubes with windows flipped on the other side with some slashes for the reflection. And yeah, the most of the top of the building is useless. No one's gonna go up. Well, actually, I would have imagined this would be a double-deckered restaurant, maybe, but I didn't actually do that in game. I could have, but I just didn't take the time to do so. So on to actually the main attraction of this area was an additional coaster. At this point in the park, I've built 3 coasters, technically speaking 2. It's the Onyx Rush and the Charmander versus Squirtle coaster. That's technically speaking 1 coaster, but it's classified as 2. I wanted to build a 3rd one, and then this one is going to be a spinning coaster. And I thought to myself, what's the most powerful Pokemon that's in the OG? And it was Mewtwo. So I was like, okay, I'm going to call this Mewtwo's Revenge. Because it's a spinning coaster, you get to spin because he's using his powers, all that stuff. I don't know much about Mewtwo, but all I know is that Pokemon can levitate and have sonic powers, and it's a magical, powerful Pokemon. So I felt like that was appropriate to have this coaster be that. And also the station would be a gym, because I didn't build a gym yet at all. Like in all of the Pokemon stuff so far, I've not built a gym, and this was the objective, was to build a actual Pokemon gym to kind of suggest, okay, we're going in here to train and maybe catch the elusive Mewtwo, and that was kind of the rough storyline in my head. I think, if I'm not mistaken, isn't Mewtwo an experiment from the people? Like humans made this Pokemon. Like, it's not from the wild, so it was bred. I think it's what I read. You guys can correct me if you can, because I think that's what it is. I think it's an experiment. So it kind of makes sense to kind of have it in a gym setting. The experiment gone wrong, got loose, you have to go catch it. Okay, maybe that's the story. At this point, it's now canon, so that's what I'm gonna say. This is all the rough storytelling I do to tell myself to make these buildings even more believable and make them more grounded in reality. That's why I do this. Just to let you know. So here's the gym building. I picked a more brown looking building because there was a couple different designs I saw on a couple sprites and some of the anime. Some of the like gym buildings were magnificent and gigantic. I was like, oh, that's so cool, but I don't want a big building because building giant structures in Parkitect are kind of hard. So kind of opted on just making a facade. Again, this is the same idea. Again, I'm making a facade with a show building, and then that's covered up by trees or rocks to kind of sell that disbelief that this building's this size was actually bigger inside. It's kind of like that Doctor Who effect, the TARDIS effect. Yeah, adding some more details to building. I would call that gingerbreading. That's the term that I've learned in the last couple of years. When you add like little details on the building to give it some characteristics or flair, which these pieces on this building are probably just pointless. They probably provide no structural value, just a look. Make it distinct from the others. Maybe that's probably what it was for. So that's kind of what I did here. So we're going to jump ahead to building Mewtwo, our last... Actually, he's not our last Pokemon. There's a couple of Pokemon I actually built off screen. I'll show you in the tour. But I wanted Mewtwo to be like the centerpiece of the coaster. You zip around these rocks like it's a destroyed quarry. And Mewtwo's just going to be floating here, and there will be dust swirling around him, and I would imagine the coaster would have some audio on it, maybe. That would be something of a cool thing. Would have some audio, so that's what I would imagine. Mewtwo's just made of your typical shapes. This one was actually a fun Pokemon to make, because it was pretty accurate to the source material that I found. So I was quite happy. I mean, Mewtwo here is actually quite gigantic, but the bigger the sculpture you make in Parkitect, the easier it is to add detail. The smaller the object is, it's harder to put detail in. It's just how it goes. This works in almost every known piece of art media that I can know. Is the smaller the object, the harder is the detail. The bigger the object, it's easier. It's just how it goes. So I'm going to quickly leave you guys here. We're going to make a tour of the park and show you all the cool things that I added also, because I added a whole bunch of off screen. And I will show you the whole park, how it's operating, and you'll see this wonderful Pokemon world, the world of Pokemon. We'll see you over at the tour. Okay, welcome to the world of Pokemon. So here we are in the first area of the park. You can already tell from my money, I've made a lot of money at this point. It's almost $200,000, and it took 35 years to complete this park, which is about roughly 40 to 50 hours of work on this park, because there was a lot going on. So here's my front area. It's like my normal plaza. Park is like my Pokemon street. So here's the very generic buildings. This actually houses a info booth and a cash machine. We got a Pokemon Mart. Here's a Pokemon that I built off screen. This is a Sorlac. This is the sleeping one. Kind of fits here. Would be a perfect photo opportunity to kind of have. I just wish they didn't walk through it, but I wanted it at diagonal, kind of sitting up against this area, and I didn't have a Pokemon for this area, so he was what was gonna be. So that's what I did. So here's the street. We kind of just drag ourselves this way. We're gonna go in the order of the video. So we're going to take a immediate turn to the bridge into Orberg, and we have our first little flat ride. This is a wipeout, and some of the buildings of the residents of Orberg. We have an Onyx that sits right here, and we have the main coaster, Onyx Rush, and yeah, this area is quite detailed, and there's just a lot going on over here. So here comes the coaster. It does a... I didn't explain what it did. It kind of went into an Immelman, into a corkscrew, into brake run. I actually had this coaster crash on me once during a rainstorm. It block braked, I think, here, and then the train came up and crashed and killed everybody on board. It was the wildest thing I've seen, because I'm like, oh, great, cool. So I had to add an additional block brake just in case that would happen ever again, but it was weird. It was bad. But here's the Orberg, and now we're gonna send ourselves this way. Oh yeah, I built a Gyarados off camera, so this was an attempt. I'm not in love with it, I'll be honest with you guys. It kind of looks kind of funny, but it does suggest it's a Onyx, not Onyx, a Gyarados, but I'm not in love with it. I'm like 80%, 70% like it. So there's another Pokemon. We're gonna venture up this street into Pallet Town. So this flat ride got a Pokeball on top of it because it needed a Pokemon aesthetic to it. And here's Professor Oak's lab with the Pokemon Snap the ride. Oh yeah, I didn't explain in the time lapse, but I did these little lamps on the floor to suggest that this lights up the sign, but there's actually lights underneath the floor that are the real lights. These are just orb lights on the floor. I wanted to kind of give it that disbelief of like, oh, these actually work, but they don't. It's kind of like just optical trick. So that's there, and then here's the dark ride for Pokemon Snap. Kind of just go this way to Bulbasaur, and then here's the weird little. I want to quickly. I think they're called dig somethings. Hold, let me go look up their Pokemon Pokédex, because I should have researched what these are first, because I know what they are. They're Generation 1. They're from like they're Generation 1 Pokemon. Oh, and the Pokédex honestly was the most helpful thing ever to find out what Pokemons I wanted. A Diglett, oh my god, and there's a Doug Trio. Yeah, that's what they're called, a Diglett. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, they dig. So I just made them. Okay, cool, now I know their names. Here's some backstage area, stuff I didn't show in camera, because I wanted to make this park realistic. I made a fake road that kind of exits out. Does nothing, kind of just stops here. I actually should have made a proper gate. Actually, we can do that real quick. I just add pillars like here and here. There you go, it's a gate. Yay. Okay. We're going to venture off to the next section. This is Jubilife City. So here is the transition into the city, and there's just lots going on here. I would just imagine that's where like most of the Pokemon Go stuff would happen, would be here, honestly. I think that's been cool. So you can see that the flat ride actually is put in the ground. I didn't explain this in the time lapse either. I put it in the ground because of how high the flags are on the building, and I didn't want to build a very tall building, so I wanted to build a very short building, so I decided to bury it in the ground to kind of give it that better scale, because I didn't like that it was be that tall. I also, in this park, I zoned everything. I'll show you the zoning maybe in a second. So here's the Parkitect building with the Nintendo symbol. Found it appropriate to hide Nintendo in there. And then here's a gym into the first ride to this is Mewtwo's Revenge, and this area actually, I did this all off camera, the rocks and stuff. I didn't show you in the time lapse, but this is all what's here. Is just kind of just a windy, twisting ride through rocks and trees, and then Mewtwo is my centerpiece. And then there's a service road back here for the rest of the park to actually supply itself to the Onyx coaster, because there needs to be a way to move supply parts to it, so that's what I did. Then an additional flat ride to kind of fill in the area. It was kind of just a boring flat ride to add. I didn't add anything interesting. I didn't add anything in here because I didn't feel like I could do anything to the garden part, so I just left it. In the last area, this was like kind of a last second addition. This had this weird spot in the middle between this and this coaster. I decided to add a Twin Leaf Town, which is another starter town, I think, in Diamond. And I felt like making this the meet and greet in the back. So there's a carousel, I added that. And then this is a fake meet and greet, it's not real. There's a one-way street, there's signs you just go through, there's a restroom and a vending machine. Guests will come back here, walk through it, come out. But in my headcanon, this would be actually a place where you take pictures with Pikachu or Ash or some other trainers or other Pokemon. It's kind of like a place for guests to go take pictures. That's kind of what was my headcanon. This honestly provides no mechanical value in gameplay, so don't do this. It's a waste of money, waste of space. But in the telling of my theme park story, this is what I wanted, and I think I like it a lot actually, because it kind of sells the idea this is a real theme park. It has a meet and greet area. Pokemon Go works in the park with your phone. There's like a whole bunch of places to go, and there's a nice little area in between to kind of go and relax. And like this little area is a place to kind of go and hide and take a relaxing time after you've ridden most of the exciting coasters and dark rides, stuff like that. So here is our full-fledged Pokemon theme park. It takes up most of the space that is granted to me. I did have the option to buy more land. Didn't want to do it. Didn't need to. I had this wasted space back here. I was going to plan to build more dark right this way, but it didn't happen. So here is the World of Pokemon, which I'm going to name this park now World of Pokemon. So here we are. There's some more backstage areas. Yeah, I hope you guys, was harder than I thought, but at the end it kind of just picked up steam, snowballed, and I got into it finally. Oh yeah, I wanted to show you service station or service maintenance building for the coaster, and I added like a crane. Yeah, it's like a crane system. I don't know what you would call it. It's just a system that would bring up the trains, put on a flatbed, and then take the flatbed out for maintenance or whatever you want to call it. So let's quickly save the park and get to see what trophy we get. I think I know what the trophy is. And the trophy is probably going to be the depot. Okay, there we go. We got the depot. There it is. And then what do we get next? Oh, we got a couple more spots. So we have Kaiserberg, which I already got, and then we get Silica. I think that's how you pronounce it. I think I'm pronouncing it right. Silica Slopes and Disaster Peaks. Oh wow, we get 3 choices again. That's insane. But I think I'm probably gonna lean toward Kaiserberg because I have some ideas just to do a normal medieval / Norse. Not Norse. Well, if I did a Frozen theme, kind of match the castle and the town, that would be a different architecture I've not done yet, but I won't necessarily theme it to Frozen. I will pull from Frozen, because I don't like the movie, but I like the structures, so I'll probably do that, make that more of a generic park, and maybe, oh, the Yeti. Oh, that'd be cool. The Yeti would be nice. I like that idea. The Yeti would be a cool little thing to do. Well, I want to thank you guys for watching. I want to thank you to my patrons to continue to support me, especially through this long build, because this was a long one. Thank you guys so much. If you guys want to support me on Patreon, you can. It's a link in the description below. It helps a lot, honestly, even though it's not that much right now, but helps in continuing the channel, because honestly, it's not the only that keeps me going. Actually, there's more than one reason, but I do thank you guys. I don't thank you enough. I want to do more with the Patreon channel, but I've had some setbacks and other things, so I will try to get to it. Maybe this summer we'll do some more stuff. Maybe we'll do actual gameplay or something. Or I want to do a multiplayer with my Patreons. I just need to figure out time zones. So if you're a Patreon, let me know on Patreon what your time zones are. Maybe we can schedule something, because summer is coming up and I have more free time on the weekends and some of the week because of work is changing. So let me know. That would probably be fun to play some multiplayer with my Patrons. I can probably maybe record those or something, maybe do a live stream at the same time. I can do that. That'd be neat. And yeah, that'll be it so far. Thank you guys for watching. And the next episode's going to be Kaiserberg, because that is the main objective. Finish Kaiserberg, and then we'll go on to the next map. So thank you so much, you guys. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.